How have you been during quarantine and COVID and everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a weird time to release a movie, and but we're very lucky, I think, having our premiere at TIFF and with such a reduced slate, it really put a spotlight on the movie, and I think a lot more people saw it. And there's really something exciting happening in the festival sphere right now with virtual hybrid festivals where films are becoming far more accessible. You know, it used to be that you had to come travel to Toronto or Sundance to go watch a movie, and this year is this exception where you can watch the movie, you know, in your own home from across the country or across the continent, and that's really exciting. So
Yeah, I think a lot more people have seen our film because of COVID than would have seen it in a
normally,
non-COVID year. So there's a silver lining.
Yeah, I saw the movie back at TIFF. Was very excited that it played at Sundance. I'm in Toronto, so you bringing up the fact that I was able to cover it from here was amazing. Was this part of like ever your expectation for the rollout to go TIFF, Sundance, South by Southwest, and then eventually landing up on Shudder?
No.
that's the dream.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
it was like a pretend marketing plan where we thought if everything amazing happens,
if everything happens just the way you want. But you know, it's funny because in so many different moments along the way, it could have gone south so quickly while filming it, while editing it. It really feels like we just barely were able to make the movie we made, and just barely able to get it in the door and find people to champion it, because I really think that at the end of the day, that's what a film like this needs. It's the right programmers that respond and connect to the work and that are excited to bring it to a larger audience. And it is a challenging and provocative film, so we're just lucky to have found those champions at each of those festivals.
I've always been curious about like the writing process, and especially more so as two writers working together. So how do you guys do it? Do you exchange scenes, write them together?
Yeah, it's really, our writing process is so much more fun for us than writing alone. I think both of us we really are collaborators at heart. And the writing process can be quite lonely, but we really write very collaboratively.
Yeah, it's sort of like a hive mind approach. So we outline everything, brainstorm everything together in the same room, and we use a program called Workflowy, which is just a really great like mind mapping list app. And it's where we just basically brainstorm, outline, and break down all of our ideas. And then once we feel like we have a really thorough outline, we start writing. And usually we'll pitch each other who we think is right to write certain sequences, and then we'll write in the same room the sequence, and that way it takes kind of like the pressure off of going to write, because you have someone there to lean on. So if I'm in the middle of a scene and I get stuck, I could just turn to Madeleine and tell her why I'm stuck, and then we can kind of work through that challenge together. Or sometimes we'll get the scene on our feet and we'll actually start acting out the scene in a way to hear the words and work through some of the obstacles. And it's just really exciting when you're able to have that kind of creative support. And then once we've done our first pass, then we do all our rewriting in the same space again.
On the same computer.
On the same computer, yeah. And that allows us to really create a lot of unity in our work. And then we have a rule where we just like rewrite each other without question. And then if that other person really loves the thing, they put it back in. And if I see that Madeleine keeps putting back in that line or keeps putting back in that little description, then it's like, okay, it means a lot to her, or vice versa. And we have to respect each other's passions. And I think that's worked out really well.
You mentioned that it's a kind of challenging film. I remember when I saw it at TIFF, I was glad that I was able to like watch it at home, because I sort of had to pause it a few times to be like, I need to breathe. So as on one hand, I would have loved to have seen it like at the Ryerson Theater, but at the same time, I was glad that I was like, I would have felt so claustrophobic throughout this entire film. Um, what were some of your like inspirations for making like for the style of the film?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I think we're very inspired by Michael Haneke, just his work in general and his aesthetic and his approach to performance. It was a real influence to us. Also, randomly, this film called Fat Girl by Catherine Breillat was a big influence to us, even though if you watch it, you might not see the correlation, but
there's
that
just
really inspired us.
Yeah, there's a really shockingly violent and disturbing final act to that film,
And also there's some very kind of meandering conversations that really tell you a lot about who these characters are. What else would you say?
I think those are good ones. I mean, what you're talking about is a really strong feeling, and I think the Safdie brothers do that so well. They create this experience for an audience. I remember watching Uncut Gems and feeling like I was having an anxiety attack while watching it. And it's not that was like a direct reference for the film, but it was definitely an influence in trying to create experiences for audiences that really replicate the internal turmoil of the main character, so that you can really connect with their emotional, psychological state of mind.
The Safdie brothers is a good sort of comparison, because I remember when I saw A Good Time in the theaters, I was like, this is felt like the most extreme roller coaster ride, and I hated it, but I loved every moment of it as well. Was there a reason you just decided to tell the story like non-chronologically?
Yeah, and that was a choice that we made very early, right at the beginning, before we even started writing. What we really wanted to do in this film is explore trauma, and how trauma is almost like a portal from the moment you're in to the moment of trauma. And there are these sensory things that can bring you back immediately to that moment. So whether it's a word or a sound or a smell, we wanted the audience to be brought back with Miriam to these moments, and to use the nonlinear structure to show the interplay between the past and the present when you've gone through an abusive, traumatic incident.
And the film really centers around questions about consent and morality. Who's doing the right thing and the wrong thing. And there's something really quite interesting about what happens when you put these scenes out of order. It forces the audience to recontextualize who they think these characters are in a really fascinating way. The brother-in-law character, who's played by Jesse Levercombe, he's really affable, charming. You think you know who this character is, and then all of a sudden you see this next sequence, and it suddenly transforms your understanding of them. And we thought that experience really replicates what it's like for someone who's been abused to have to deal now with how they have to recontextualize these people in their lives, someone they trusted and loved. And so that was really fascinating for us. And then also it's thematically structured. So there was a kind of rule in terms of how we mapped it out. And it was really designed in a way that shows the unraveling of Miriam's character, so that we understand what causes her to go to these lengths, and what pushes her to finally do what she does in the film.
It seemed, I'm not entirely sure, were some of the like flashbacks intentionally shot to like look brighter? Or was that, I think, only a few sequences that it might have?
I don't think so. I mean, the whole film is shot with all natural light, and I think that there were certain sequences that were more moody than others. So, for example, the scene by the fire, they're just basking in this warm firelight, and like Barry Lyndon, for example, is like a huge influence with those like painterly reds. So it's just this red wash, and then you get to the sequence where she's raped, and it's dawn, and it's really cold, and so those are, I guess, really dark and stylized.
Yeah, we also chose, we used filtration and lenses to really kind of again map this unraveling of the character. So when you're seeing her at the beginning, we've got soft filtration. It's kind of dreamy, it's fairy tale-esque, and as her she starts to descend, we used these very old Soviet lenses that create a really unique bokeh behind the subject. So it's almost like the world is crushing in on.
When did you know you wanted these like super eerie, odd transitions? Because I think those just kept pulling me in every single time.
That's great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Some of it was scripted, but a lot of it was discovering moments. Like, for example, when we were filming the waterfall sequence, we found this gorgeous caterpillar, and there was this beautiful rock face that it was on, and it was a perfect close-up shot of that caterpillar. We couldn't have written that caterpillar in the movie. And then genuinely, we were shooting this other scene, And we look over and there's a spider eating a fly. And it was like, we're in the mountains, in the wilderness for so long. And then if you stop and look around constantly, you start to see some really magical and horrific things that are really great parallels and juxtapositions for what's happening in the story. So it was actually, we're very lucky to have found all of that.
Yeah, like the bugs, all the little water skaters on the lake was just completely, we went down at dawn to shoot the mist on the lake and it was just covered in these bugs, and it was like a blanket of water skaters, and we could never have planned that.
Yeah, and then so some of the transitions were kind of integrated. Others were like happy accidents where we were filming the ending of the film, and we had this huge gathering of family and friends who were coming to be in the film, and there was this huge barbecue, and we wanted to do this really elaborate drone shot where it starts as a close up and then it slowly pulls back, and we're in the middle of filming it, and we realize, oh, this is like a Robert Zemeckis movie all of a sudden. This is not our movie. I don't know why we were planning this. And it was like a 4-hour setup for this one shot. And then I realized as the sun was setting, there was this like gorgeous like bridge in the horizon, eerie, like that's just kind of like coming out of the woods. And we're up in the sky. And I was just telling the drone operators, what if we canted the drone? Can we cant it? And can we do this weird thing where we turn up this way? Because I remember that we filmed something similar at sunset like weeks and weeks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it like dawned on us, oh, this could be a really cool visual transition up in the air where we're suddenly, it goes from dawn to dusk, or sorry, from dusk to sunset, and we jump in time on this one movement. And again, that was just like being in the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
and things working out.
Was the like the wolves and the rabbit sort of one of these magical things that you happened upon too, or was that planned?
Yes, that would be crazy.
The wolves were planned and very difficult to find, but we ended up finding this black wolf. It was actually 2 black wolves.
Yeah. But it was the bearing of the wolf, of the rabbit, that
yeah.
was magical. So we couldn't have scripted that. And what happened was that the wolf just got full from eating and had a rabbit in front of it. And its nature is to bury its food to come back to it later. So it was just this instinctive thing that it did. And it was just so magical that it was happening, like the soil and the leaves on its nose and all of that. So we really just documented that in the moment.
See, all this like spur of the moment filmmaking also reminds me of like Malick's films and Tree of Life, and which was another thing I sort of was watching and I was like, it felt similar to that style as well at points.
Visually, for sure, a huge influence. I mean, what I love about Terrence Malick's work is the natural lighting. Like it really feels like you're there in those moments with those characters, and there's a really beautiful impressionistic quality to his cinematography. So that was a huge visual influence for sure. Yeah, Tree of Life, it's just like constantly find myself going back to it. In Days of Heaven, yeah, constantly. There's just so much there to mine. And I think for us, it was about this kind of heightened realism. So we've got these grounded performances in natural lighting style, but then you've got these really heightened elements, with the score,
like the score
and the transitions, and hopefully that really amplifies how you experience the movie and how you're connecting with the characters.
How have you felt about like the acclaim? Because there's been a bunch of other critics or fans of stuff that I've spoken to, and everyone is like violation rules. Like it's been like it sort of took them and just floored them away.
I mean, that's really nice to hear.
It is really nice to hear.
Though I would say that like we obsessively read everything, even the bad stuff. So it's really nice to hear that there's like a more positive than negative, because it's such a challenging film. And I think also, I remember I was on Letterboxd and I was looking at what someone wrote, and they wrote grotesque, and I liked it because it was like, yeah, it is grotesque. But you could tell that they didn't like the movie because it was grotesque. That, you know, sometimes audiences go to the theater and they or watch a movie and they want to feel good, and when a movie makes them feel really rotten inside, they don't like it as a result. So there's that too that we're kind of realizing as we kind of share this movie, that it's definitely not for everyone, but when we do see audiences respond to it, it's great.
The people who like it really like it, which is awesome. It's not it's definitely not a film. It's like English people would say, it's a Marmite film. You love it or you hate it. You know what Marmite is, you'll get the reference.
Even I brought up to my mom that I was going to be doing this interview, and I mentioned, she asked what the film was about, and I sort of like, to simplify it, said like a rape revenge film. And she sort of looked at me, and she's not a fan of most horror films, so she was even more stunned, and she's like, why? And I sort of uh, don't want to speak for other people, but I know a few other critics and fans who find it super like empowering, and I think the that some of the stuff, and I don't want to reveal too much, but there were moments I think when I was watching it recently to prepare for this, where I was like cluing in on how you sort of, your relationship with your sister's character, and how that ends up at the end, and it was like that sort of seemed at moments to hurt more than the rest at parts, and I
Yeah,
found that also powerful.
yeah, I think that's really really exactly what we hoped people would get from it. I think it definitely operates on two levels of being this revenge story, but also on a deeper level being this story about two sisters who is kind of a tragedy, the way their relationship unravels. They have all of this history that makes their relationship very complicated, and it makes them not able to really empathize with each other and see past each other's flaws.
And in many ways, I think though we love the revenge genre, we were more interested in making an anti-revenge film, right? We're so used to seeing this kind of cathartic climax where we celebrate the revenge, like we are cheering, we're like, it's romanticized. There's something beautiful about the revenge, but in this film, that's not the case, and it actually happens right at the midpoint, where you see this real monstrous act, and it's so grounded and hopefully realistic and gross that it makes you kind of sick inside, and you suddenly realize the movie's not about the act of revenge, it's about the consequences of revenge, and how it can really erode your morality and destroy the fabric of your character and your relationships around you. So for us, it was more of a cautionary tale, and I think that this film's really personal for the both of us. We've both experienced trauma and abuse in our past, and in many ways, it's like the film's designed to scare ourselves not to want to take revenge, because we're just like, this is what
would happen.
This is what it would really kind of be like, like how, you talk about murder and getting rid of a body. Well, what does that really look like? What's the toll it takes on your mind, on your body, and on your relationships? And I think trying to portray that as much as possible was what we were really drawn to.
So last thing I want to bring up, our site, The Underseen, one of the co-founders, me being the other one, she went to TFS. Two more of our writers are from there as well. So I was wondering if you wanted to sort of talk about your experience at the school.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, we've been teaching at the Toronto Film School for several years. I teach a post-production class and a pitch packaging class.
Yeah, I teach acting and writing. And we had some of our key collaborators on this
film
were grads. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of, an amazing thing about teaching is that you get to kind of see who the star students are, who are so talented and who are going to go a really long way, and get to work with them on your projects, which was really, really lucky. So like our line producer, Rebecca Uboa, our first AD, Marie Soleil, Kellick, our AC Artem, it was like we had
AC slash gaffer
slash grip. So it's great to hear that.
Great. Well, I'm excited to see how the rest of like everyone's experiences are with the film between the eventual rollout with South by and then eventually Shudder. That's unfortunately only in the US and not here in Canada, but
so that we can't say much about it, but there'll be some positive good news coming toward Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so
Sounds great.
people are going to get to see it. It'll be great.